In this demo, I want to get you familiar with tab controls and how they can be used with data binding. Starting point for this is a WPF project with a main window and a main window view model, and then a product view, which is a user control, and its own associated view model. The view model for the product view model is just loading up products into a products property on the view model, which can be rendered out in a list-oriented control. In addition, it has a product type string that can be used to label what kind of products this view is rendering. The view itself is just going to use a list box to render out those products. And notice that no data context is set inside the user control because it's going to be set dynamically through data binding. The individual products are being rendered out using a data template, specifically an implicit data template for the data type product. The main window view model at this point just has a property called child view models, which is a collection of those product view models. So the scenario here is that we want to render out individual tabs in a tab control for different categories of products or product types. So using data binding, we're going to create a collection of child view models here, one for each product type, and have data binding render out the appropriate view and view model in a tab for each one of those. To do that, we'll need a tab control. So let's drop into the main window and add a tab control bound to that child view models property on its view model, which is already wired up as the data context. Next, we need to actually populate that child view models collection with something. So I'm going to drop into the constructor of the view model here and populate it with an observable collection, or putting one instance of the product view model in for each of the 3 product types that are in our products collection: pizzas, salads, and drinks. Product view model takes that type that's passed in and uses it to set the product type property. And then notice it's filtering the products that it loads into that view model based on that type. So now we have a tab control, which is an items control itself, bound to a collection of items, but it needs to know how to render those items out. And it's going to do that with data templates. So we're going to go up here to our resources section and add in a data template, an implicit data template, mapped to the product view model type, which is going to be the individual items that show up in this child view models collection. And similar to a demo in the data templates module, the actual rendering for a product view model will be its corresponding view, and its data context will be set to that instance of the view model through the magic of how data templates work. Now, if we run at this point, we're going to see this strange looking view where we actually have tabs here. You can see I can click on them and the appearance is changing. But what's actually happening is that view is being rendered in the tab itself, the tab header. And we don't have a scrolling container, so we can't see it, but it's actually rendering them again as the content of the tab. Not exactly what we wanted. The reason for this is a tab control is an items control, but it's really a composite items control. It's going to render a tab item for each of the items in its data-bound source. But a tab item itself has 2 parts to it. It has a header and it has content. The header is a content control and the content is a content control. And the data context for the tab item as a whole is the individual thing that's being rendered, in this case a product view model. So the data binding in the content of the header binds to that, and the data binding in the content of the main client area of the tab also binds to that. So what we need to do here is control this a little more explicitly. What I'll do is I'll drop into my resources and add another data template. This one's going to have a key to it so we can point to it explicitly, and we'll call this the tab header template. Here you can see we're just going to bind to product type because the overall data context for the tab item is still going to be the view model, and that's a property exposed from it. Now we need to go down here to our tab control and actually pull that template in by name. So we'll set the item template property through a static resource pointing to that tab header template. Now notice if we wanted to do the other one explicitly, we could do that. And what we would use is the content template property and point it to whatever template we want. But since we're using an implicit data template here, we don't have to do that one. That one can match up implicitly. But if you have an explicit one hooked up, it will ignore the implicit ones. So with that fix in place, now we've got what we want. We've got the tab headers are being set based on the product type property of our view model. The tab content is being set to an instance of the view model, which gets married up through the data template to its view and rendered out.